The morning sun cast golden rays across Westminster Abbey as crowds gathered outside, their excitement buzzing through the crisp London air. Inside the ancient cathedral, preparations were underway for one of the most anticipated events in British history. Prince William stood in a private chamber, surrounded by his closest advisors and family members, preparing for the moment that would change his life forever. Catherine, now the Princess of Wales, watched her husband with gentle eyes, as he took deep breaths, trying to calm his nerves. The weight of centuries of tradition pressed down on his shoulders. But there was something different about this coronation that nobody yet understood. Hidden beneath the formal preparations was a deeply personal story that would soon touch the hearts of millions watching around the world. Royal tailors moved carefully around William, making final adjustments to what appeared to be traditional coronation robes. The crimson velvet gleamed under the soft chamber lights, embroidered with golden threads that caught every movement. But as they worked, something unusual became apparent. Tucked carefully within the inner lining of his ceremonial cloak was a small, weathered piece of fabric that seemed completely out of place among the royal splendor. The Archbishop of Canterbury arrived to discuss the final ceremony details. His ancient voice, carrying the wisdom of countless coronations before. This one, he noticed William's fingers nervously touching something near his heart, hidden beneath the layers of royal regalia. When their eyes met, the Archbishop saw something he had never witnessed in decades of royal ceremonies. A vulnerability that spoke of deep personal meaning rather than ceremonial duty. As the time drew near, William's children arrived to wish. Their father well, Prince George, now older and more aware of the significance of the day, stood solemnly beside his younger siblings. Princess Charlotte clutched a small bouquet of flowers, while Prince Louis tried to understand why everyone seemed so serious. The family moment was tender, but William's hand kept returning to that hidden spot near his heart, as if drawing strength from something precious concealed there. The sound of church bells began to echo across London, signaling that the ceremony would soon begin. Thousands of people lined the streets, waving flags and cheering, completely unaware of the emotional journey they were about to witness. Television cameras positioned throughout the Abbey would soon capture images that would be replayed millions of times. But none of the technical crews understood the profound story that was about to unfold before their lenses. In those final quiet moments before stepping into history, William closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. His fingers once more found that special place near his heart, and for just an instant, his composed royal demeanor cracked slightly. Those who knew him best could see the mix of grief, love, and determination that flickered across his face. The coronation was about to begin. But the real story, the one that would move millions to tears, was still hidden beneath layers of tradition and ceremony. The doors of the chamber opened, and the sound of ancient hymns filled the air. It was time for Prince William to walk the path his ancestors had walked before him. But he would do so, carrying something that made this coronation unlike any other in British history. The world was waiting, cameras were rolling, and soon everyone would understand why this particular moment would become one of the most emotionally powerful scenes ever broadcast from Westminster Abbey. The grand procession began as William emerged from the private chambers, his royal robes flowing behind him with each measured step. The Abbey fell silent, except for the soft rustling of fabric and the distant sound of crowds outside. From around the world turned to watch as the future king walked down the ancient aisle. But something about his posture suggested he was carrying more than just the weight of the crown. Catherine followed at a respectful distance, her own ceremonial dress shimmering in the colored light that streamed through the Abbey's stained glass windows. She had been with William through every step of this journey, and she alone knew the full significance of what he wore beneath his royal attire. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she watched her husband approach the altar, knowing that millions of viewers around the world were about to witness something extraordinary. The television cameras captured every angle as William took his place before the Archbishop. Close-up shots revealed the intricate details of his coronation robes, the golden embroidery, the precious stones, the symbols of royal authority that had been worn by kings for generations. But the cameras also caught something else. the way William's hand kept moving to a specific spot over his heart, as if protecting something infinitely precious. International commentators spoke in hushed, reverent tones describing the ceremony's historical significance and the magnificent regalia on display. They pointed out the crown jewels, the ceremonial sword, and the ancient symbols of power that surrounded the altar. Yet none of them understood that the most meaningful element of William's attire was something that couldn't be seen, something that connected this moment to a love story that had captured the world's imagination decades earlier. As the ceremony progressed through its ancient rituals, William remained composed and dignified, every inch the future king. But those who knew him well, his family, his closest friends, and the palace staff who had watched him grow from a young prince into a man, could see the emotion he was carefully controlling. There was grief there, and love, and a determination. To honor someone who could never be present for this momentous day, the moment came for William to remove his outer ceremonial cloak before receiving the crown. Royal attendants moved forward to assist him, their movements practiced and precise. As the heavy velvet fabric was lifted away, the television cameras caught a glimpse of something that made the director in the broadcast booth lean forward with sudden interest. There, pinned carefully to the inner lining of William's formal jacket, was a small piece of fabric that clearly didn't belong to any royal regalia. The camera operator, following instinct more than instruction, zoomed in slightly. The fabric was pale blue, delicate, and obviously very old. It was pinned close to William's heart with a simple silver brooch. Nothing fancy or ornate, just a small, personal token that seemed to glow with significance against the formal backdrop of the coronation ceremony. Social media began buzzing almost immediately. Viewers around the world started posting screenshots and asking questions. Royal watchers and journalists began frantically researching, trying to identify what they had seen. The fabric looked familiar somehow, but it took several minutes before someone made the connection that would send shockwaves of emotion around the globe. Meanwhile, William continued with the ceremony, unaware that his most private tribute had been captured by the cameras. He knelt before the archbishop, ready to receive the crown that would make him king. But his greatest treasure remained hidden against his heart, a piece of his mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved for 26 years, waiting for this exact moment when he would need her presence more than ever before. The recognition spread like wildfire across social media platforms as royal historians and devoted fans of Princess Diana began sharing their discoveries. The pale blue fabric pinned to William's heart was unmistakably from his mother's iconic wedding dress, the same gown that had captured the world's attention in 1981 when a young Diana Spencer married Prince Charles in this very abbey. News anchors around the world began receiving urgent messages in their earpieces. The story was breaking in real time, even as the coronation ceremony continued with its ancient solemnity. In broadcasting studios from New York to Tokyo, producers scrambled to find archival footage of Diana's wedding, comparing the fabric patterns, and confirming what millions of viewers were beginning to realize. Back in Westminster Abbey, William remained focused on the sacred ceremony unfolding around him. The archbishop's voice echoed through the ancient stones as he spoke the words that had crowned kings for centuries. But even as William prepared to receive the crown, his mother's presence seemed to fill the space around him. Through that small piece of her wedding dress, pressed close to his heart, Catherine watched from her designated place, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. She remembered the day William had shown her the carefully preserved piece of fabric, explaining how he had asked the palace staff to cut a small section from Diana's dress before it was put on permanent display. He had carried it with him on their wedding day, hidden in his jacket pocket, and now he wore it openly as he became king. The television cameras continued to capture the ceremony, but now they lingered longer on William's face, searching for signs of the emotion that viewers around the world were beginning to understand. Royal protocol demanded dignity and composure, but the human story unfolding beneath the ceremonial robes was touching hearts across every continent, in living rooms around the globe. People who remembered Diana's death were reaching for tissues. The young princes who had walked behind their mother's coffin were now grown men, and William was about to become king. The sight of him carrying a piece of her wedding dress to his own coronation felt like a bridge across time. Connecting that tragic day in 1997 to this moment of triumph and responsibility, royal experts began appearing on television broadcasts, explaining the significance of what viewers were witnessing. They spoke about Diana's relationship with William, her hopes for his future, and the way she had prepared him for this role, even as she struggled with her own place in the royal family. The piece of wedding dress wasn't just a memento, it was a symbol of a mother's love that had survived scandal, divorce, and even death. As the moment approached for the crown to be placed on William's head, he closed his eyes briefly. Those watching could almost see him drawing strength from the connection to his mother, feeling her presence in this moment she would never be able to witness in person. The archbishop lifted the ancient crown, his jewels catching the light streaming through the abbey windows. The weight of history settled on William's shoulders as the crown touched his head. But the real weight he carried was the love and memory of the woman who had shaped him into the man he had become. In that instant, as he officially became king, the small piece of pale blue fabric against his heart seemed to pulse with all the love, hope, and dreams that Diana had invested in her eldest son. The crowd in the abbey rose to their feet, their voices joining in the traditional acclamation, but around the world, millions of people were wiping away tears as they witnessed not just the crowning of a king, but the fulfillment of a mother's deepest wish for her child's future. The moment the crown settled on William's head, something extraordinary happened in the abbey. A shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds outside, streaming through the ancient stained glass windows to illuminate the new king in golden light. Those present would later describe it as if Diana herself was blessing her son's coronation from above. And the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone watching around the world. William's composure finally cracked slightly as he felt the weight of the crown and the warmth of the unexpected sunlight. His hand instinctively moved toward his heart, toward the piece of his mother's dress, and for just a moment, his eyes filled with tears. The cameras captured this raw moment of humanity amidst the grandeur, and it became the image that would define his coronation for generations to come. Social media exploded with reactions, as people shared their own memories of Diana and their emotions watching her son become king. The hashtag #DianaSprints began trending worldwide within minutes. People posted photos of themselves watching Diana's wedding in 1981, comparing them to pictures of their children watching William's coronation. The generational connection was profound and moving. In the abbey, Prince Harry sat among the congregation, separated from his brother by years of tension and disagreement, but united with him in this moment of remembering their mother. Cameras caught Harry wiping away tears, as he, too, recognized the significance of what William wore. Despite their differences, the sight of his brother honoring their mother in such a personal way touched something deep in Harry's heart. The archbishop continued with the ceremony, but even his ancient voice seemed touched with extra emotion as he proclaimed the new king. He had known Diana personally, had counseled the royal family through the difficult years of her marriage and divorce, and had presided over her funeral. Now, seeing her son take the throne while carrying a piece of her wedding dress felt like a completion of a story that had begun with such hope and promise. Catherine approached the altar for her part in the ceremony, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. As she knelt beside her husband, she could see the small piece of blue fabric clearly, and she remembered all the conversations she and William had shared about his mother. Diana had died before Catherine could meet her, but through William's stories and memories, she felt she knew the woman who would have been her mother-in-law. The television commentators, fully aware of the story unfolding before them, spoke with new reverence about what they were witnessing. Royal ceremonies were usually about tradition and history, but this coronation had become something more personal and human. The sight of a son honoring his deceased mother in such a touching way transcended royal protocol and touched something universal about love, loss, and remembrance. Around the world, people began sharing their own stories of carrying mementos of lost loved ones to important events. Social media filled with photos of wedding rings worn by widowed parents, pieces of jewelry inherited from grandmothers, and other small treasures that connected people to those they had lost. William's gesture had given others permission to speak about their own grief and the ways they kept their loved ones close during significant moments. The ceremony moved toward its conclusion. But the emotional impact of what people had witnessed was just beginning to spread. News organizations scrambled to interview royal biographers, psychologists, and grief counselors about the significance of William's tribute to his mother. The consensus was clear. In a single, simple gesture, the new king had shown that even royalty carries the same human needs for connection and remembrance that touch everyone who has lost someone they love. As the final hymns echoed through the abbey, William stood tall in his crown and robes, every inch a king but the small piece of his mother's wedding dress against his heart reminded everyone watching that he was also, and always would be, Diana's son. As the coronation ceremony drew to a close, the newly crowned King William began his ceremonial walk back down the abbey's ancient aisle. With each step, the piece of his mother's wedding dress moved gently against his heart, a private reminder of love that had shaped his entire life. The congregation rose in respectful silence, but many were openly weeping as they understood the profound personal journey they had just witnessed. The global reaction was unlike anything the royal family had ever experienced. Television networks around the world interrupted their regular programming to focus entirely on the story of Diana's dress. Royal palaces were flooded with messages from heads of state, celebrities, and ordinary citizens expressing their admiration for William's touching tribute to his mother. The simple gesture had transformed a traditional ceremony into something that touched the deepest human emotions. Outside Westminster Abbey, the crowds that had gathered to celebrate were now sharing tissues and comforting strangers as word spread about what William had worn beneath his royal robes. Street vendors began selling flowers to throw in tribute to Diana's memory, and impromptu shrines appeared throughout London as people left bouquets, photographs, handwritten notes, expressing their emotions about the beautiful way her son had honored her. Back inside the abbey, as William prepared to exit through the great doors, he paused for just a moment. His hand once again found the spot over his heart where his mother's dress fabric rested, and he closed his eyes briefly. Those closest to him could see his lips move in what appeared to be a silent thank you, whether to his mother, to God, or to the universe that had allowed him to carry her love with him to this moment. Catherine joined him at the abbey doors, taking his arm in the traditional manner, but also offering the comfort of her presence as someone who understood the emotional weight of what he had just experienced. Together, they stepped out into the London sunshine to face the cheering crowds. But both carried the knowledge that Diana's spirit had been present throughout the ceremony in the most beautiful way possible. The photographs taken as they emerged from the abbey would become iconic: William in his crown and ceremonial robes, Catherine radiant beside him, both of them glowing with the emotion of the moment. But for those who knew the full story, the most powerful element in those images was invisible: the small piece of pale blue fabric that connected a son to his mother across the years that had separated them. Royal biographers would later describe this coronation as the moment when William truly stepped into his role, not just as king, but as Diana's legacy made manifest. The shy young boy who had walked behind his mother's coffin had grown into a man who could honor her memory while embracing his own destiny. The piece of her wedding dress was more than a memento. It was proof that love transcends death and war, that a mother's influence on her child can last forever. International newspapers began printing special editions focusing on the story. The front pages featured side-by-side images of Diana on her wedding day in 1981 and William at his coronation, both wearing the same fabric, separated by decades, but connected by unbreakable bonds of love. The headlines spoke of heartbreak and healing of mothers and sons, and of the way love can bridge any gap. As the newly crowned king and queen made their way to Buckingham Palace for the traditional balcony appearance, William kept his hand pressed lightly over his heart. The crowds lining the streets had no idea what he was protecting there, but they could see something different in his demeanor, a peace and confidence that seemed to radiate from within. He had become king, but more importantly, he had carried his mother's love with him to the throne, ensuring that her spirit would always be part of his reign. In the days following the coronation, the world continued to talk about what they had witnessed. The image of King William with his mother's wedding dress fabric pinned over his heart became one of the most shared photographs in internet history. People from every corner of the globe reached out to share their own stories of carrying mementos of lost loved ones, creating a global conversation about love, loss, and remembrance. Mental health organizations reported an unprecedented number of people reaching out for support in processing their grief. Inspired by William's example of honoring his mother's memory in such a public and beautiful way, grief counselors noted that his gesture had given many people permission to speak openly about their own losses and the ways they kept their loved ones close during important moments. The palace, initially surprised by the intense public reaction, decided to release a statement explaining the significance of what William had worn. They confirmed that the fabric was indeed from Princess Diana's wedding dress, and that William had specifically requested it be preserved when the dress was prepared for museum display. The statement described his desire to have his mother present in spirit during the most important moment of his life. Royal historians began comparing this coronation to others throughout British history, noting that while many monarchs had worn family heirlooms or carried personal items during their ceremonies, none had ever made such a powerful and emotional statement about honoring a parent's memory. William's gesture was being hailed as a perfect example of how the modern monarchy could blend ancient tradition with genuine human emotion. The fashion world also took notice, with designers around the globe creating tribute pieces inspired by the coronation story. Several major fashion houses announced they would be creating memorial jewelry and accessories that would allow people to carry small mementos of their own loved ones in elegant, beautiful ways. The idea of memorial fashion became a trend that honored both style and remembrance. Schools around the world began incorporating the coronation story into their lessons about grief, family, and emotional intelligence. Teachers found that William's example helped children understand that it was natural and healthy to want to keep deceased loved ones close during important events. Art therapy programs reported children creating projects about their own family memories, inspired by the king's tribute to his mother. Most remarkably, the story seemed to heal some of the divisions that had developed around the royal family in recent years. People who had been critical of the monarchy found themselves moved by the simple humanity of a son missing his mother. The gesture transcended politics and protocol, reminding everyone that beneath the crowns and ceremonies, the royal family dealt with the same losses and emotions that touch every family. Years later, royal watchers would still point to this coronation as the moment when King William truly won the hearts of his people. Not through grand speeches or impressive ceremonies, but through a small piece of blue fabric that carried a mother's love across the years. The sight of him protecting that precious memento over his heart had shown the world that he understood what really mattered, not the power of the crown, but the enduring strength of family love. The piece of Diana's wedding dress remained with William, carefully preserved and occasionally worn during the most significant moments of his reign. It became a symbol not just of his relationship with his mother, but of the way love can survive any loss, any separation, any amount of time. In carrying her with him to his coronation, William had ensured that Diana's spirit would always be part of the monarchy she had once found so difficult to navigate. The coronation had made William a king, but the small piece of pale blue fabric over his heart had shown the world that he would always be, first and foremost, his mother's son, and that perhaps that was the most important qualification of all for wearing the crown.